Okay, thanks.
We'll always have some group of parents who will have another take on it. So.
Good evening, everyone. I call to order the Monday, November 22nd meeting of the River Falls Board of Education. This meeting has been properly notified. Are there any visitors or delegations who would like to address the board this evening? Please limit your comments to 2 minutes at the most.
Hi, I'm Jackie Nickham. I live here in River Falls. I have two items that I would like to talk about just briefly. And,
You have 2 minutes.
Yep. And one was the Crt statement that Mr. Benson made last month. A little history about that. So back in the 1960s, late 60s, early 70s, there were a lot of riots and so forth going on, and they were the Students for a Democratic Society, the Weatherman, the Black Panthers, and they really they were not happy with the United States of America. So years went by, they went to college, and they became the college professors that are teaching the children. So they're teaching in colleges, and then those people come to our schools and they teach the children, and they have political agendas. So I know you said that we're not teaching CRT in school, but I don't see how you can really stop these teachers from having a political agenda. And it comes out in sentences periodically during a class period. So yes, you said you're not teaching CRT, but the teachers still have opinions, and those do come out. So just to be aware, and I would love to see that we have cameras in classrooms. I've asked for that before, and I'm going to ask for it again. Just something to think about. The other thing that happened is Ms. Myers at the last meeting said that you would probably revisit the mask mandate at some point in time when, if and when the children were allowed to have the vaccine. I hesitate to call it a vaccine, actually, but anyway, I'd like you to keep in mind, and I see that the 5 to 11-year-olds, they're actually, at the library tonight, I think they were actually able to get shots for their kids if they wanted to. Please keep in mind, and I'm saying that to all the parents out there that are maybe be listening to this, this is all emergency use availability only, the emergency use authority. They're not approved. If you are sending your child to have these vaccines, they are basically entering a clinical trial. And those vaccines affect those children and all of us for the rest of our lives. So please keep that in mind. Also, since these vaccines are not approved at this point in time, they're still under the emergency use authorization only. The pharmaceutical companies and the government have no financial liability. If your child is injured, it's all up to you to take care of that. You cannot sue the pharmaceutical companies or the government. So
You've used
please,
more than 2 minutes now.
Thank you. Please use your best judgment when you make that decision for your family.
Would anyone else like to address the board this evening? Welcome, and please limit your comments to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Sure. I'm here tonight, as I've been here many other nights. I know it's on the agenda again to talk about COVID, so not surprising I'm standing up here once again with the thought of the COVID mitigation efforts on my mind. I wanted to start out by saying thank you.
Please tell us your name first.
My name is Stacy. I have 2 children in the district. I want to start by saying I do appreciate that you've gotten rid of the close contacts and kept school in person. I think it's made a huge difference, and certainly my children have been affected by not being close contacted this year, thankfully. For months, many of us parents have stood up here asking you to think about the emotional toll of the best intentions and safety mitigation efforts that are being taken for our children. Many of you and many community members say our children are resilient and they will be fine with the efforts we're taking. After all, it is for their health. And even local medical professionals that contribute to this board scare us by saying that COVID is now the number 8 or maybe number 9 killer of our kids, and that's terrifying. But there are many things that aren't being said. For one, these medical professionals didn't bother to tell the community or you what the other killers are. Did you know that influenza and pneumonia are higher? Did you know that respiratory diseases are higher? In fact, we're seeing a skyrocketing of RSV across the state. And did you know that self-harm is actually a much higher reason for death among child-age students? Not COVID. And while number 8 sounds terrifying, it really isn't when you start to think about that mental toll. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and Children's Hospital Association declared a national emergency in children's mental health in October. These are the same associations that recommended social distancing, masking, and other items. Yet they are now saying and sounding the alarm that mental health is a major issue that we have to consider. Yet we continue to ask them to be resilient and suffer that mental toll of keeping our community safe. Would the children really tell you if they didn't like wearing masks? The staff, their parents, the doctors, and you are all in a position of authority, and we've taught our children not to question authority. You are teaching them to fear others and to fear the world. I can only imagine it's because many of us are driven by fear. Perhaps that is what our world has come to, that you have lost faith in God's plan for all of you, that we've lost faith in humanity and other people. I've reviewed the slides that will be shared tonight, and I see a lot of fear-mongering yet again. You'll share with us the hospital capacity being high, and perhaps you'll explain it as high because of staffing shortages, not necessarily because of COVID. You'll share with us the per 100,000 cases, which makes the number seem really high, but we are in fact in the same trajectory as last year. Welcome to seasonality. And you want to do the same thing as last year, and that didn't work. So I stand here today, and even though I should be asking once again to make masks optional, you have proven time and time again that in fact you aren't interested in following the true science, because if you were, we wouldn't still be having this discussion. I'm a huge proponent of unmasking our kids, and I hope you realize that even with mitigation efforts, the numbers last year and this year are almost identical. The definition.
Spoken for 2 minutes.
Well, let me leave you with this. If you're limiting my time when I see almost nobody else left here to comment, I want to share an anecdote with you that happened at my church recently. We were talking about the fruit of the Spirit. We were talking about kindness and what it means to be kind to someone else. And certainly we've all lost track of that, and the fruit of the Spirit is definitely needed. And it was shared with the school-age children that to be kindness, you can share a smile, spread a smile, give one to someone else who might be having a rough day, and so on and so forth, and they may spread that smile elsewhere. And one brave child raised their hand and said, "We wear masks at school. I haven't seen a smile in almost 2 years." This child doesn't know what a smile looks like from their teachers and their classmates because of what we're doing. And that is why we have a mental health crisis, because we continue to do things that are safe for them instead of recognizing what that does to them when they will never tell you different. So I pray for each one of you that you will be moved by the Spirit to reconsider what safety equals as you think about mental health for these children and the scarring that you are doing for the rest of their lives.
Would anyone else like to address the board this evening? We are going to move on, and the next thing for us under informational items is that we have a Wildcat Pride Award. Todd.
Steal that mic. Gotcha.
Natalie, would you come down, please? So tonight our Wildcat Pride recipient is Natalie Gomez, and I'm going to read here, come on down. Get under the spotlight. Get the full effect. Natalie serves the students and staff of the River Falls School District as a bilingual paraprofessional. Natalie consistently goes above and beyond to support her English language learner team, teachers in the district, as well as all students she works with on a daily basis. Natalie works one-on-one with students to ensure that they have an understanding of the English language and provides additional translation and interpretation support. Her primary responsibilities include River Falls High School, Rocky Branch, and the RF4C program. However, you will often find Natalie providing interpretation services at parent-teacher conferences, parent meetings, and during student enrollments. Her talents also extend to her digital creation and EL team leadership in creating our team's monthly newsletters and extends to district-wide translation support. Over the past 2 years, she has single-handedly added to her responsibilities to serve the district office in ensuring that all of our digital communications is provided to our families, both English and Spanish. Natalie advocates for our EL families and is always willing to assist in a timely manner, recognizing that we are often under a tight timeline. Thank you, Natalie, for your dedication and passion to our school district and local community.
Oh, just a minute. You can't leave that fast. And what I'd like to be able to say is there's a big difference between doing a job and serving where you are. And it sounds to me like you are the kind of person who is serving wherever you're needed and however you're needed for the best interest of our families and our kids and our community. Thank you very, very much. And now we have a spotlight on education, and we are going to focus on gifted and talented programming. And Jennifer, I think that you get to come up and bring your reinforcements, please.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Well, I just wanted to introduce our gifted and talented teacher this year, and with appreciation for the school board for making this possible for us to have a part-time teacher to really try to meet the needs of high-achieving students in our district. And so really, Abby is the one who is the brains behind all of this, and I wanted to just give her the opportunity to kind of highlight what she's doing to support our high-achieving students in the district through enrichment programming, and what she's been able to do this year as a new teacher in our district to jumpstart this program. It was really tough last year starting a gifted and talented program in the middle of a pandemic with a person focusing on EL supports and gifted and talented, and so we were really blessed to have Drew transition into full-time EL support this year, which she's doing a phenomenal job on. And bringing Abby on, I think you're going to see some passion to supporting all students and what she's doing tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Abby Mazii, and she is going to share what she has done in the few short months since the beginning of the year.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here tonight to shine the spotlight on our district's growing gifted, enriched, and talented program. We've been so busy already this first trimester, and I just wanted to share what we've been up to and what plans we have as the rest of the school year unfolds. Next slide. My name is Abby Mazii. As I tell the kids, Mazii rhymes with lazy eye, and I'm so pleased to be joining the River Falls School District this year. Next slide. Starting the year, my first goal was to form relationships with the teachers and keep them informed about how I'd be supporting them as they got to know their students. Using last year's forward data, the base of previously identified students, and the information gleaned from this fall's data digs, it was important for us to establish a system for identifying who we needed to support and how teachers could communicate this need. Next slide. Seeing as how students' strengths are not only indicated by scores from standardized testing, teacher recommendations based on local norms and classroom performance play a big part in forming enrichment groups. Teachers who feel as though a student displays exceptional strengths in aspects beyond their test scores have access to our student inventory checklist. On the next slide. Where a teacher can reflect upon students' intellectual, creative, leadership, and artistic characteristics and request a child be enriched if they find the student to be consistently or above average compared to their peers. Next slide. Should a student's district assessment scores indicate advanced learning and the teacher recommendation based on characteristics of the learner as a whole, building and district staff can then decide to move forward in the steps outlined in our identification process checklist. Next slide. As I met with the students and the teachers and I got to know their needs, I was able to build my schedule. This is where I am most of the time. Sometimes I have to skip back and forth. Next slide. Enrichment groups are flexible and can be formed to enrich the standards being addressed in the classroom or to promote talent and interests and strengths. Groups change, sometimes weekly, to optimize personalized learning and extension of specific skills and standards as they're being presented in the classroom. Students need not be formally identified to participate, as each student presents strengths and talents in different concepts and subjects. Because of this flexibility and personalization of learning, I'm proud to say that I'm able to spend a good deal of my time with enrichment groups in first grade all the way to 7th grade, in 3 of our elementary schools, our middle school, and even with friends from our eSchool program. The next slide. This is just kind of a sneak peek into what I get to do on any given week. We've got first, third, fourth, and fifth grade groups at Westside. This is a picture of the fourth grade Wordly Wise group at Westside. They're working on acquiring academic vocabulary that's going to help them be even more successful in their learning. We have a 5th grade group for that too. We've got some 5th grade Rocky Branch math enrichment students, and they were discussing patterns in their pyramid puzzles where they're trying to decide if a noticing or an observation can be applied to other puzzles and therefore make it a rule. Sometimes we find noticings that are good observations, but they don't necessarily apply to everything else. So it's fun to see them say, oh, I noticed this, and see if that applies to something else. We've done some seasonal things. Our 6th graders at Meyer Middle participated before school on Wednesdays in an out-of-the-box thinking competition where they were able to collaborate and use their creative thinking and building skills, and that was a lot of fun. And we, 4th grade enrichment group at Greenwood, which changes almost weekly to extend the standards that they're working on. Those who are strong in those skills often come to play a game or do an enrichment activity during that time. So this is them playing a roll and race geometry game. Sometimes it gets a little rowdy. All right, next slide. So parents of participating students are informed through communication provided to the classroom teacher by me when they start attending enrichment groups. They also received updates at the time of parent-teacher conferences to let them know what we've been up to and just to share how incredibly proud I am of their hard work. It's a lot to ask kids to do extra, and they really thrive with it. Next slide. Teachers are also able to reach out to me to provide enrichment opportunities that they can incorporate in their classrooms on the days that I am not able to be with students. Paraprofessionals in our elementary buildings are running reading groups using materials and strategies that I've modeled and provided to reach our strong ELA students. Teachers are using centers and games that I've been able to prepare to extend math standards and concepts that they're teaching the entire class, allowing all students to enrich their learning if they have the time available. Next slide. As this is a half-time position and I can't be all of the places at once, I wanted to offer as much support and opportunity for curious learners to explore their interests and strengths outside of the scheduled direct student interaction. Mrs. Mazey's Curious Learners Portal has been established to offer opportunities for extension and enrichment outside of the classroom and outside of the constraints of my classroom. So on the next slide, that paw print up there is on every student's ClassLink Launchpad, and when they click on it, they're taken to Mrs. Mazey's Garden, which leads them to games, videos, learning links, and activities which are leveled by grade and sorted by interest or strength. This allows students even not participating in the current groups that we're doing to be curious about their learning on their own time. It's an ongoing project, and in continuous development. There's always more to add. The next slide. I'm also working with students to develop their talents, interests, and strengths outside the school day. We're participating in opportunities in the community, which is really neat to see. The next slide. We're facilitating entry into local contests, offering passion projects, and utilizing CESA's Gifted and Talented grant to attend regional learning experience, to interact with our intellectual peers, stretch our students who are looking for more. These extras can really help to fuel their students' love of learning and apply their strengths and interests and talents. Next slide. We've had an amazing start. I'm proud of our advanced learners, strong leaders, and creative friends. I have so enjoyed being a part of their days. I'm incredibly lucky to work alongside such passionate and talented educators who are always open to ideas and put their all into their students. As we reflect on what has been working and what we'd like to change moving forward, I know that the kids are the focus, and we will collaborate to ensure that we are helping them feel successful and confident in their learning. Finding the balance between direct student and interaction and engagement, which is my most favorite part, being with the kids, and the work necessary to develop and continue to build a program here in River Falls is our next action step. Our work supports our district's mission in providing personalized learning for each student, developing the student's unique potential, creating a handbook of policies, recommendations, and procedures will continue to guide our work in continuously evaluating our programming and its direct impact on students. We anticipate that we will continue to learn and grow, finding ways to best support our students and teachers in the school setting, and building community resources through a program website that is accessible to learners outside of the school setting. Fostering curiosity, celebrating student strengths, developing their talents, and offering opportunities for them to explore their interests helps to build confidence and extend their love of learning. We want them to be curious. We want them to want more. We build our program to achieve these things. Thank you for your time tonight and for your continued support of our program. At this time, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Stacy. Thank you, Abby. This is very important work for the district, and I really appreciate your attention to this. I'm just, one of my questions, well, first off, I'll preface before I say this comment. As you present to us, it's a reminder to us all of the things that happen in the school district in support of instruction outside of, in addition to the regular classroom teacher. It's easy for us to think about the classroom teacher is there teaching the class, and that's kind of the extent of it. But we have this whole support system that goes around it. We just had a recognition about our ESL efforts. There are reading and math specialists that help us, tutoring, social and emotional support, all these kinds of things. And Gifted and Talented is just one more of those things that helps classroom teachers and helps students. So appreciate that and appreciate the contribution you make to that. I'm just wondering, parent involvement can make this, can really be a big part of what you do. I'm just wondering, do you run into challenges with students whose parents don't have the time to support this, or maybe they don't have the parent support that other kids do? And what kind of things you do with those students who don't have the intense parent support that others do?
Sure. Well, I'm lucky enough that a lot of my time that I'm at the schools is spent with the kids. So we really do get a lot done in the amount of time that we have together. And teachers are able to, in that time that's listed on my schedule as district float and program development, it allows me to be flexible and to maybe head back to a school that I was already at that day, or maybe something that I need to do more with others. We've talked about the idea of lunch bunches. We've done our group for the middle school before school. And I try to reach them as much as I can personally. And then beyond that, for them to be able to know that there's that Curious Learners portal where they can explore their interests and strengths. There's everything from the Met for Kids to NASA to math to geometry, everything that they could be interested in. So that's just, they all have their Chromebooks, and I know that many of the kids have access to that outside of school. Another thing that we'd like to do moving forward is just, we are able to reach out to the community and those who have a passion as well. That's good for the kids to see, to make that connection. So whether that's through a passion project, we have a e-school student who's designing an eco-friendly camper, and he's been put in touch with an engineer who works for Dutchman. So just to get a real life experience, we have the same student as actually, and I know other middle school students have been offered the same opportunity. Minnesota Rubber is running an innovation contest. So they have interaction with them as well once they've submitted their idea. They'll have the opportunity to talk to community members about those things. So I think that it's interesting for them to make connections with all the adults that are on the support team, and even if the parents aren't able to support it, to know that we're all part of the team and we're interested in what they're interested in.
Thank you, Abby, for coming and for helping us to have a sense of what this program is all about. I'm really interested in your Curious Kids portal, and it actually strikes me that that could be interesting for even a wider age range of kids than are specifically identified in your program.
Yes, and
Are there options for that for other kids too?
every student has that link on their Launchpad, and I would say that 90 of the students I see in any given week are not formally identified gifted and talented students. So this is enrichment for everyone. If you have a strength or an interest or a talent, and we can promote that and help you find a way to do that, we're working hard to do that. Something that's coming up soon that Jennifer and I are going to work on, and we've been collaborating with individuals from other districts to, they've got great programs and we look up to them, is to create a more specific gifted and talented program website, in that it's open to the entire community. So, once we have that built and set, then that can be for everyone.
Good, thank you. Todd?
I was going to ask a question. Just, it mentions here close to 100 kids, and you mentioned that your time can't be, it's not a full-time, so it can't be all places at all times. Are we being held back by some of those things? I mean, are there more kids identified that aren't able to be captured, or what would be how does the time that is devoted to this match up with the need of the program as identified, I guess would be maybe the question.
I think formal identification is something that we're trying not to spend our time on right now, in that trying to reach as many kids as possible. So based on their test scores and their advanced learning, or as I said, recommendations from teachers based on their skills, whether it's a leadership skill or a creative talent, those are ways that we're trying to just broaden our umbrella of who we have time to see. So we could, as any teacher would tell you, of course I could use more time.
I get that. The answer is always going to be yes.
Yeah. So, as the teachers get to know their students more and we keep adding groups on, I think I get new groups every week, and the groups change. So sometimes, based on the standards that are being addressed in the class, they are kind of fluid in who gets the chance to be there. And that's nice, because then we're reaching, those teachers have their finger on the pulse of what's going on, and they can tell me and I can adjust.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to move on to the superintendent's report. Jamie?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Stacy. I'll provide my monthly board update regarding all things COVID related. And so I'll start off by mentioning that today and tomorrow, as you know, we canceled school primarily because of the COVID rates of our students and staff, not to mention our community. We've had a significant spike. I'll share some numbers with you here in a minute. Also, secondarily, we're having some challenges with filling some substitute positions in our district. And so we're hopeful that this 9-day break might help to slow the COVID transmission and put at least a dent in the rate of transmission. Obviously, it's not going to be a cure-all, but we felt it was appropriate to take those steps at this time, considering the numbers that I'll show you. Next slide, please. So here in a 3-week window from October 21st through the date we made the decision was on November 12th, a week ago Friday, that we decided to say, we need to give enough notice to our parents. And so considering the steep increase, we decided to, the steep increase in cases within our community. Again, this is the COVID cases in our district boundary, 24,000 people. This gives you a snapshot. You can see by that graph the steep increase that we had in that 3-week period. Next slide. That just blows up that last section of the 3-week period. Next slide, please. This is our internal student and staff cases. Again, another steady increase in that same 3-week window. Next slide, please. Just gives a blow up of the same number, more than doubled for our in-house district student and staff cases. Next slide. Comparison, I've been showing this the last couple of months here now to the board to give you an idea where we're at. This is the apples to apples on the top. I mistakenly cut that off. That is a reflection of the per 100,000 population. And apples to apples is, again, that's the way to compare regardless of the population of each of those communities. When you compare the COVID cases per 100,000, that's the equalizer. That's what allows us to show apples to apples. Next slide. Hospitalization rates, Northwest Wisconsin. You can see the capacity concerns there as well. Next slide. Minnesota Metro hospitalization statistics here, 95% capacity. Next slide. So the secondary reason I just included, this information was sent home to parents. I just took a excerpt from a letter that was sent home to parents and put it on this slide to give you an illustration of where we're at with absences and the concerns we have in filling some of those positions. 31 unfilled teaching positions and 49 unfilled support staff positions. And that, again, was just in the first 2 weeks of November. This has been a problem for us throughout the year, but it's a growing problem. And so, we don't leave students sitting in classrooms when we have an unfilled position. Others have to step in, whether it's come to school early, stay late, fill in during your prep period, skip your lunch, whatever the case might be. And so we're managing it, but it's just taking away from the overall effectiveness and our ability to really run a school the way that we want to. Next slide. I'm not going to even have Amanda open that. That's just a slide that you can reference to look at the current matrix that we do have in place. But my last slide, next slide, please. Here it talks about the fact that the board, administration, we're all hopeful that the COVID infection rates would decline to allow us to pivot to optional masks. Obviously, however, the current case numbers with the steep decline where I'd showed you on those graphs earlier, now would not be the time for us to do that. We're hoping, again, the 9-day window is going to put a dent in that number, and that with more people considering their initial vaccine, the booster, and the age 5 to 11 availability, that it too, according to the medical and science experts, would drive down transmission rates and illness severity. Obviously, my disclaimer on the bottom is, I'm not your physician. If you're in doubt, you have concerns over whether or not the vaccine is right for you, my note is to encourage you to talk to a physician. So for now, no school these 2 days. We originally already had on our regular schedule, as we do every year, the week of Thanksgiving, no school on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but we took 2 extra days off this week due to the COVID case numbers. Any questions?
I just want to thank you, Jamie, for working with your team to provide the Kids Club on Monday and Tuesday for families of elementary students for whom that last-minute change was difficult. So
Yeah,
thank
thanks.
you for that. That's a really important way that we are serving and trying to meet the needs of all families.
Yep, that's Angela Bonart reserves the kudos for her effort to coordinate those opportunities, as well as our staff who stepped in and said, yep, I'll help out. We want to try to keep those numbers down, the class sizes, if you will, low, to continue to utilize our mitigation efforts, but at the same time, we know of the inconvenience, particularly for elementary-age parents, in not having school these 2 days. We felt that we needed to step in and help them so it did not affect their employment status.
Stacy,
Yes.
two brief questions. Thank you, Jamie, for this ongoing information, and this is always very helpful. We got an update in the Personnel Committee from David and Bell, and he was talking to us about the number of vacancies we've got to fill for substitutes, and we've talked before about enrollment and how a lot of students are missing school right now because of exposure or exposure in the family, people who are infected in the family, students who are infected, and that creates quite a lot of work for the teachers, and I appreciate that, and I think we all appreciate that, but I think it should be said that when students are coming and going and all of the things going on right now, the workload for the teachers increases. And in talking to several teachers over the last couple of weeks, I realized there was one other thing that creates this. It's not just that students are coming and going because of COVID and other illnesses and close contact and sporting events, extracurricular activities, those kinds of things. It's also, there are a significant number of families this year taking vacations and pulling their kids out of school. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be doing that, but it's important for all of us to realize what a significant workload increase that makes for teachers and how that affects other kids to have kids out of the school for several days and then having to make up that work. There's just lots involved in this, and this has really been a busy a year for all of the staff, the administrators, the teachers, the staff, trying to keep track of all of this. So I think we tend to focus on masks, vaccines, those kinds of things, but there's a lot of moving parts, as I kind of alluded to before, and it's one thing I would say. The other is, it's never been the intent of this board to keep masks forever, and we're moving toward a point where we won't have masks anymore, and we're monitoring this data. And now that vaccines are available, we're being asked more and more what's going to be the impact of that, and I think Jamie has alluded to that very well. To vaccinate your kids or not vaccinate your kids or your family or yourself or all of that is an individual decision. As a district, and as a board, we've got no move to try and mandate or force vaccinations or those kinds of things. However, personally, and I've said this at board meetings before, I want to encourage it, and I'm hoping a lot of people do, but this is an individual decision. I'm not afraid of vaccines. I got my booster a month ago. I got my flu shot. I got them both on the same day, one on each arm. Boom, boom. My 6-year-old granddaughter got her shot at school first time around. And so for us as a family, this is easy. But there are a lot of families trying to decide, what should I do about this? And Jamie mentioned it up there, and it's there. My response has been to everybody, you have to decide as a family, are your kids going to get vaccinated or not vaccinated? How do you make that decision? Your kids already have a whole bunch of vaccines. They've been vaccinated for a whole bunch of other things. How did you make that decision? Who did you talk to? Talk to that same person. So if it was your family physician who talked to you about getting all those vaccines, then talk to your family physician about whether, if you've got questions about whether or not your kids or your other members of your family should get vaccinated this time around. I think it's a health decision. It's not something that people should try and make on their own or listen to their neighbors. Talk to your healthcare professional if you've got concerns about it. Anyway, enough said.
Thank you, Jamie. Do you have anything else for your report? All right.
Nope.
And I don't believe that we have any administrative reports, and our students are unable to be here.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Todd.
I just was going to ask, I don't know that I have a question on the, the presentation, but I would be curious to know, I've done the math, and I know you have as well, Jamie, on some of the timing and the trajectory of things. I guess I'd be curious to know, at what point we would be considering a decision there. Are we looking at case numbers to come down? Are we talking about it in regard to masking specifically? Are we talking about it based on the timing of the vaccine? Or is it once case numbers get down to a certain point, then we'll consider talking about it? I guess I think just for transparency, I would be interested in exploring that conversation a little bit further at this point if there's an opportunity to do that, or at least hearing a little bit more about what other people's thoughts are, because I know I have some too.
Yeah, if I can just jump in, I would say, prior to this last 3-week spike, I was receiving phone calls and talking with several board members about your desire to have us take a look at the potential to just say masks are going to be optional, and to your point, and when would that be? Not that those conversations were to say that would be effective immediately, but we found ourselves, I think, in conversation often referring to that the option that parents have to consider their 5 through 11-year-old to be vaccinated could be a factor that the board would consider as a part of the decision to either A, get rid of the matrix altogether and we don't even have a matrix, we're going to go to optional masks, or B, we would change the matrix so that it wasn't as stringent and we could modify the numbers to again guide the decision for when we would wear masks. The risk in doing that is the yo-yo effect, of course. Our current matrix calls for a 2-week consistency with numbers so that we hopefully could avoid some of the yo-yo. Masks are on this week and they're off next week and so on. So I think what the board will be faced with in the future is a decision on A or B. Tweak the matrix and revise it, or drop the matrix altogether. That's one point. And the other is, the first thing I said is whether or not in the minds of the board it will weigh heavy enough related to the availability of the vaccine for the 5 to 11-year-olds, regardless of how many people do that, how many parents choose that path, just knowing as a board member that that's a choice and that's an option that now effectively almost all ages of children in our schools, as well as the adults that work here and our community, are eligible for that vaccine. And we all know, I think everybody knows, that COVID is not going to go away anytime soon. It's not going to disappear probably for years. It may be with us for a lifetime, for that matter. The question is then, the third piece to the puzzle is, to your question, so if the vaccines are out there and we're going to debate over the matrix, would we consider those two things no matter where the COVID case numbers are in our school and in our community? And right now, I'm just recommending that right now would not be the time to bring forth a decision on this board agenda to say that we're ready now to go to optional masks. If we're going to play the card, if we're going to play the 5 to 11 vaccine card is now available, we're going to play that card and put it on the table as part of our line of thinking, then we need to be mindful on the amount of time that it takes for the vaccine to become available and into the arms of the 5 to 11-year-olds, plus general rule of 2 weeks after your final vaccination. And so that would automatically push us towards, not making a decision here and now. But those are the three things, I guess, that come to my mind in relation to the board's thought process on all of this. The matrix, the new vaccine available for 5 to 11-year-olds, and then the overall COVID case numbers.
Yeah, I think all of that makes sense to me. One other thing that I've tried to consider, going back to the time that all of the schools have been in session, is finding districts that report similar numbers on a weekly basis of cases inside their students and staff for the week, and looking for a trend in regard to that percentage of their population inside the district or inside the buildings compared to what we're seeing with ours, and after having a couple more months of data, as opposed to just one thing that made me feel uncomfortable in August was the unknown of what was potentially happening, and not having time to interpret the effects of variant, and not having all ages be able to get vaccinated if they wanted to. And so now having 2 to 3 months of that data would be another factor for me in trying to help shape that decision. I would say, to me, somebody who was really on the fence with this back in August, the vaccine availability for those kids 5 to 11 is going to be a difference maker as far as I'm concerned. And not to throw out case numbers, but I'm going to probably be able to look past some of those case numbers that even that we're dealing with here, for my own personal comfort. If families have the option for those kids to be vaccinated, that was the biggest probably sticking point that I felt like we were dealing with in August, is the decision those people wanted to make wasn't available to them at that time, and that's not going to be the case here. Again, if you do the math, maybe sometime by early January, that will have changed.
All right, this is good.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with
It's
it.
a superintendent item, so we're going to keep
Okay.
our comment. Go ahead. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that we're not going to have long
No, long debate at all.
conversation.
No, I've had conversations with Jamie as well, and I agree with what Todd's saying, is that many of the conversations we had with families in August were the inability to get the vaccine for those 5 to 11-year-olds. Now the opportunity is present for them. It's up to them to decide to get it or not. And the timeline is about that first or second week in January. I agree, we can't do anything now at this point with the community spread and such. The other thing that wasn't available or talked about in August is the ability to get a booster for those that have had 6 months or more. I think that's going to help as well. But perhaps we can look at the matrix or another issue in the December meeting. But we had mentioned in August that this is not the intent. This matrix is not meant to be or to have the masking and whatnot be mandatory for the rest of the school year, and look for an opportunity for an off-ramp, so to speak. And although the cases are high now, I guess I'm encouraged with the availability of vaccines and such that could lead to lower numbers, hopefully next month at this meeting.
I think what you just ended up saying is really important, that hopefully
Yeah.
boosters, the availability of the vaccine helps to reduce infections so the numbers look favorable. I agree. All right, we do not have any other administrative reports that I'm aware of. We also don't have our students with us tonight, and so we're going to move on to action items. And the first thing is that we have minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting from October 25th. We also have bills that have been submitted for payment, as well as recommendations regarding employment. So at this point, do we have a motion to approve minutes, bills, and employment as presented?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Todd. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lindsay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. I should have said that
Roll call.
Amy is with us on the telephone, which means we do need to
Roll
take a
call,
roll call
yeah.
vote. So I'm going to back that up. I apologize, Cindy.
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
We're doing our roll call. I'm saying yes.
Yes.
Todd and Lindsay?
Yes.
The motion is carried. All right, we will move on to the report and potential action coming out of the Educational Program Committee, and I'll turn to you, Alan.
Yeah, we had a really good meeting a couple of weeks ago. Our kind of featured presentation this time was Jennifer Ames, the new Director of Community Education and Communications. She talked a lot about what's been going on in community education, and especially the things that she's starting to do now to ramp up communication and help us as a district provide more transparency and more communication generally with families, but even more so with the community as a whole. Talked about what's going on with Facebook and working with community data and other kinds of things. So there was no action with this, but it was very informative to hear about what's going on in community ed and the steps she's taking now in her new position in communication with the community. We also had 2 issues that we dealt with to propose changes in how we handle field trips. In the past, we've had all field trips kind of go through committees, requests for field trips, and then they have to be approved by the whole board. And we're trying to shorten that up and make that a little bit more efficient and change the accountability there. We tabled those, and those still aren't ready to come in front of the board, right? We don't have them on tonight. So we had some feedback for those. It's not major stuff, but there needs to be some more thinking on this. We're not under a tight timeline on it, so those worked. The Wisconsin Academic Excellence Scholarship, there was just one tweak to that. The one issue, Jennifer, was
With the lottery system, we're not able to use that as the sole first primary
That's right.
rationale to administer and award that scholarship.
right. So it was just one. So the requirements from the state as to what we used, we were using the Loudy system. We can't use that solely, so it's a broader list. So we'll have that for approval in just a minute. I'll come back to that. And then, no, that was the last one. So anyway, I will, and we've got that for action tonight?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
461.
So I will move that we approve the change to the Wisconsin Academic Excellence Scholarship, the way in which the district handles those.
So this will be the first reading
First
of this policy 461. And Bob, you're seconding?
Second, yeah.
Thank you. Questions or comments or further discussion? This is a policy that needs to be changed to match how things work within our district in the lottery system. So I'll do a roll call. Cindy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
I'm saying yes. Todd?
Yes.
Lindsay?
Yes.
The motion is carried 7-0. And Todd, I'll turn to you for finance and facilities, please.
So we had a meeting on November 8th. We met at the Amplexer building in the Whitetail Ridge Corbett Park, and that was a chance for us to tour that facility as a potential site for the Renaissance Charter Academy. And we had the broker and the building owner were there and took us through and got a feel for the space and had a chance to go through and look at it. We've talked about a number of different sites, and this was part of the due diligence on one of the sites that's been identified as a potential candidate. So I think everyone had a chance to go through and get a feel for what was there. There was a little bit of discussion at the same time, but it mainly centered on a tour of the building.
Thank you. We are now turning to action item letter D. And Chad, could you give us some background on this, please?
Sure. So I want to bring to you here 3 recommendations that we have that will take us in our next chapter here for the Renaissance and also for district-wide master facilities planning. We had a committee that consisted of myself, Joe, Superintendent Benson, Todd Schultz, and Amy Elverson. We met about 2 weeks ago on 2 different days. We interviewed 9 different firms over the course of those 2 days. We had 4 architects and 5 construction managers. We made the unanimous recommendation as a group to pursue negotiations with a company called LHB. They're a company that focuses primarily on K-12. So that obviously fit what we were looking for. They're also a full-service firm in that they provide all the engineering as well as the architectural designs. And they also have educational planners on staff, again, so they understand K-12 schools. We did reference checks with a number of schools in Wisconsin that have used them, and they came back with a resounding, yes, you want to hire them. We were able to negotiate a rate of about 5.75%. So what that means is when we ultimately get to a larger project, we'll pay them that particular rate. But to put it into perspective, about 10 years ago with ATS&R, which was also a full-service firm, we paid about 8%. With AIRS, we were at 6%, and so we're at 5.75% here. Now we're looking for the most qualified, but we were also able to get the most qualified at the lowest rate here. So that was really a win as well. Probably one of the nice things that did come up in the reference checks is that they are very good at complicated projects. So if you were to think academy building or something of that nature, they've got a pretty good track record in that. So I'm not sure that we necessarily have something like that coming up, but it just shows their attention to detail and their ability to pull off a complicated project. So we're excited to make that recommendation as a group. The second party that we were looking to work with us here for the next few years is a construction manager at risk, and we went through that interview process as well. It was very competitive in the sense that all five firms are very, very qualified, and their rates were all very, very competitive. And again, these folks also had a very strong emphasis in school construction projects, which are very different and unique when compared to, let's say, constructing a retail store or something of that nature. So all of those firms fit that kind of that prerequisite. Through that process, though, we did definitely, as a group, make the recommendation to continue on with Kraus Anderson. We were able to negotiate a lower fee than we had been experiencing actually with our past contracts in reducing what are called reimbursable expenses. So things like their cell phones that their superintendents have, trucks, and those kinds of things. We were able to say, no, zero those out. And so they were willing to do that. So obviously, one of the nice things there is they have a very strong familiarity with our building. So we're going to be moving quickly, much more quickly than if we had brought someone else in. So we're, I think, proud to make that recommendation as well. And then we are also looking to, for a Renaissance project, which may be smaller in nature. Obviously, we have some planning and decisions to make yet, but if we do have a remodel project that would entail the Renaissance, we would consider that a smaller project, you know, in comparison to maybe a $20 or $30 million project like we've been used to. It might be something less than $1 million. In that case, it makes good sense to hire a local firm who has a very, very good, solid, reliable, and very reasonably priced contractor base. And so for a Renaissance remodel project, should we go forward with that, we're recommending that we go ahead with Ross and Associates, and I'm going to begin negotiating that contract, you know, in full here this week. So we're making the recommendation that on a Renaissance project, should it be in that $500,000 to $1 million range, we would engage with Ross and Associates. Todd, Amy, Jamie, anything you'd like to add?
I'll just add the primary reasons for why the district is bringing on an architect and a construction management firm at this time. One is that we need to find, in the short term, we do need to find a solution for a new home for the Renaissance Charter Academy, our alternative high school. And then second reason is to develop a more long-range master facility plan to address some other potential needs in the district. And so there's no other immediate plan for any kind of a construction project on our books. We have to identify those needs. There would be a process by which we would look at our enrollment projections to determine moving forward into the future, where are we at with space needs. We'd be looking at an aging transportation center affectionately known as our bus garage, looking at other potential space needs. We have a school forest project. There may be some community interest in potentially having a facility located at the school forest. There's a number of different things here at the high school level with the options to be explored for getting our wrestling program out of the basement of the middle school, looking at potential improvements to other athletic facilities. But it's a long study process that's ahead of us, and so I just want to be clear that it's within that process and identification of those needs that these two firms are brought on to help develop that long-range master facility plan.
So I want to clarify what is before the board today. It would be the hiring of the architect and the construction management. We are not making a decision about Ross and Associates, not that we won't in the future, it's just that we're not doing that this evening, correct? Todd, do you want to say anything since you're on the committee?
Yeah, I just was gonna add, and Jamie kind of touched on it, that, you know, the idea was all of the companies that we heard from, the architects and the construction management firms, gave kind of an in-depth discussion about their process for going through, and even showed us some very detailed spreadsheets that they would use to identify kind of an immediate need in each building, and very detailed stuff, going through all of the mechanical systems and those kind of things, and immediate need, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 7, 7 to 10 kind of a thing, so that we would basically have a full inventory in front of us of what that looks like, and then be able to assess those in addition to some of the things that Jamie mentioned that would be on the potential horizon for future projects. So,
Thank you.
So-
Amy, do you want to say anything since you were on the committee too?
No, I think Jamie and Chad covered it.
Okay, thank you. Alan?
A couple questions for clarification. So are we signing a contract with these folks? So what's our vote tonight? What's the commitment? Is it long-term? Is it just to say, use these? Is this for a long period of time? What are we voting on?
So what we are doing is we are doing two things. We are bringing on board each of them to assist us with the long-range plan, and they had a fixed fee associated with that of $14,000 for Kraus Anderson and $12,000 for
I think it's-
LHB. So we are making that commitment to take that step forward. We are also then saying that if or when we would have a large-scale project, that they would be able to help us with that project. And we have followed this prototype process for the last two referendums.
Okay. For the foreseeable future, this is not like forever or for a short period of time. This is for those things as you specified there. So we're voting on those two. So what is it that's different? I mean, I like the fact that we've got a local business here. I like Ross and Associates in that. But why is that on here, but we're not voting on that?
We're not,
We don't have a hard project yet at this point in which to say yes to.
Okay, all right. So we've got the three here, but we're only voting for those two, as Stacy said. But Ross is out here that if we do a smaller project, they're the ones we would go with, but you don't need board approval for that?
Not
Yeah,
yet at this time.
and
because we don't
I'll-
have a project yet.
Right, okay.
I'll add a little specificity to that specific work that we're pulling aside to say that when the board decides what our solution is for the Renaissance Charter Academy, and we have some conversations that we have to have yet to determine, are we going to build new? Are we going to lease existing space? Or what will that look like? An example for Ross would be if we would decide, if the board does decide to lease some space and we needed to do some renovation to that existing space, we would have Ross do that work.
Would you
And
need-
so not until that project is defined would we establish a final signature on that contract with Ross.
Okay. Do you need board approval to move ahead on that? Or you're letting us know today who that would probably be, But at a certain point, if we contract with Ross Associates, would you need board approval for us to do that?
I would be
Yes.
looking to get.
Okay,
Yes.
so you're telling us tonight that your intent would be to ask Ross to do that, and that you'd be coming to us at a future meeting?
And
for
they are
that.
willing to do
Okay.
that, yes.
Good, I
Correct.
like that, yeah.
So at this point, I think I'd like to have a motion, and then we can have further discussion.
Stacy, I'll move.
I'll make the motion to approve the hiring of the architect and construction management firms for the purpose of identification for the best option of the new location of the rent.
For Kraus, Anderson, and LHB. Thank you, Amy.
Correct.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Todd. Todd, I'll go to you for the first comment after the motion.
I guess I don't have any, I didn't have anything additional to say,
Okay.
so.
Is there anything else about this?
I appreciate the fact that you've been be able to negotiate down those fees, especially on the architect, Chad. That's great.
Stacy, I guess I do have a comment. Amy's been through this process a couple times, I think, but as somebody who sat in for the first time, it was certainly interesting and I guess nice to work on something like this instead of some of the COVID and some of those type of protocol things that we've been talking about a lot. But it was the presentations we got all included, pretty thick books that these firms had put together, and they all put a ton of time into their presentation. So it just, I guess I'm thankful that we have a good group to choose from when it comes to something like this, and all of them were very impressive to go through and witness.
Thank you, and thank you also to Chad. I believe you and Joe also did a fair amount of work behind the scenes to check references and to follow up on each of these firms, which is really important and protects the board's interests. So thank you for that. Anything else? I'm going to do a roll call, and I'll start over here. Lindsay?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
I'm saying yes. Amy?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
The motion is carried. All right, personnel, Amy?
Yep, the Personnel Committee met on November 8th, and we just had an ongoing discussion of for the Teacher Compensation Steering Committee. We have one action item tonight, and that's to approve the revised Student Service Secretary job description, and then review the staff planning calendar for the next year, and then finally, we heard an employee wellness update. Most of the things we've been talking about for a while now, but I would make the motion to approve the Student Services Secretary job description.
Thank you, Amy. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Cindy. So to look at the revisions of the job description, it's page 21 in your board packet. They're relatively modest changes to be able to reflect in the job description what the people are doing in order to fulfill the demands of our programming. So we have a motion that's been moved and seconded. Did we? Did I get a motion on this?
Yep, I
Yes,
made it.
okay,
Amy
that's
did.
right, yeah. Is there anything else? Okay, roll call again. Lindsay?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
I'm saying yes. Amy?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
The motion carries. All right, now we have a responsibility to review comprehensive safety plans and related safety drills. And so, Nate, I'll call on you to lead us through that, please.
All right, well, each year, the Office of School Safety has certain requirements that school districts have to meet, and a lot of those happen by the new year, but this is one that has to be approved in short order after some safety drills. So what you have in front of you tonight are reports from all of the schools in the district regarding some school safety drills that we conducted through the month of September and into October. You can see that the elementary reports are pretty much identical. We follow the exact same protocol, a progression from, I guess you could say, crawl, walk, and maybe walk a little bit faster. We didn't really do any running this year for a number of reasons, trying to take care of COVID situations and also just minding the social and emotional well-being of the students that we have at that particular level. And the high school, middle school, and Renaissance also have a similar approach, following a progressive drill sequence, and their reports just look a little bit different, but rest assured that everybody is practicing and rehearsing and having mental rehearsals and discussions related to these different safety drills. I should add a couple of things. Maybe it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago that we adopted the ALICE protocol. We thought that that was a pretty easy to teach system and one that was well known. Even though we didn't use ALICE before that, a lot of the techniques that we were using were in line with that. And the drill sequence that we use is, again, I mentioned the word progression. It's one that aligns with what the National Association of School Psychologists feels is developmentally appropriate for the kids. So everything that we're doing lines up with what they would suggest would be appropriate for the age groups that we're practicing with.
Thank you, Nate. At this point, do we have a motion, please, to approve the 2021-2022 school safety drill evaluations?
So moved.
Thank you, Cindy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alan. Questions or comments? No?
I just have one quick question. I know our school principals are really great about giving advance notification to parents to let them know what's going to be going on and some of the conversations they're going to be having in the classrooms. Do you have any sense as to how many parents ask for their kiddos to opt out and not participate?
Yeah, I thought you might ask. I haven't been notified this year of any families that have opted out. That doesn't mean that there weren't some, but it's generally very few. I think maybe you could count them on one hand. Jamie sends out a mailing to all district families in advance of any of these drills to give that notice. I think that there was a level of concern maybe 4 or 5 years ago when we started making a conscious effort to have a program that was consistently applied across the district. But since then, I think the nature in which we've handled it, the trust that we have from our families has really limited that level of concern. One of the changes that we've made at the middle school and high school, different than the elementary, is at the elementary level, we do a week-by-week progression. We don't want to inundate kids with so much at once, and we realized that although this year there wasn't as much physical practicing, which to be honest they really need, we were doing mental rehearsal in place of it. At the high school level, they can tolerate a lot more, especially for students who've been in our system since 6th grade and maybe now who are in 8th or 9th or 10th. It's pretty much the same techniques that we're teaching. It's not anything new, and they handle it very well.
I appreciate the developmental sensitivity that I see, particularly in the elementary reports. I'm pleased with the idea that we don't use the term bad person, but this idea of a dangerous someone, I think, is a good idea, and I appreciated the sensitivity to that in talking with children.
Can I make one more comment? I think we hear a lot about school resource officers in the news nowadays in certain communities and districts choosing not to have them in their schools. I can't say enough about the resource officers that we have, Officer Jensen and Officer Gottfredson. They carry a pretty big load when it comes to the drill sequence and talking with our students. They do such a great job. Our kids are excited to see them. They're comfortable. They speak at a level that the kids can understand. And I think if you were to ask, and we have through surveys, climate surveys in our schools, kids and their families feel safe when they're at our buildings.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that, Nate, because I think that if you were to ask most people in this community if we had police officers in our buildings or not, most people wouldn't know that or acknowledge that. And we have been really blessed with the program that we've got on those resource officers. I've been impressed year after year. It's the people that we've got, but it's also the partnership that we've got with River Falls as a city and the police department there, and that we share those positions and we share some of the responsibilities. It's just been a great working relationship with the city. Those are two excellent, excellent people. I don't think I've ever heard a parent or a student speak ill of them. and they're good. They come in front of us and give their annual reports, and they communicate well with us. I just think from a safety standpoint, the issues of social and emotional development in our buildings, to know that those two resource officers are there. We're very fortunate to have that, and I appreciate your involvement in that, Nate. So,
I'm going to add to your list a bit, Ellen. I think that I 100% agree with you. The people who fill that role for us do such an excellent job. I think we also have to recognize that we have a helpful vision of what this relationship is and what it isn't. And the preventative nature of that and the relationships that our school liaison officers establish with individual students and within the school environments make a tremendous difference. Okay, anything else? All right, then we're going to take a roll call vote, and I'll start with you, Cindy.
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Alan?
yes.
Amy?
Yes.
I'm saying yes. Todd?
Yes.
And Lindsay?
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Do we have any proposed items for future board meeting agendas?
Stacy, we talked
Yes.
about this, but I'd like to see us at least by December talking about or considering action on our direction with COVID protocols.
I'm not sure that it's going to be time in December to take action, but what we could do in December is outline some of the data points that we'd be looking at to be able to make a decision.
Okay, I guess for me, I'd like to see us take, I don't know that I'm going to be looking at data points much longer, honestly, so
I think we could, we'll
Yeah.
see how it is, but I don't think that we want to put our administration in a position of saying that this is what will for sure happen in December. I think we're wanting to give a bit more breadth of saying, we're moving toward this and we'll see what happens.
okay,
But I'll record that you're anxious, and I'll keep track of that in my mind. Other things? All right, the next meetings, we will be meeting with Educational Program on Monday, December 6th at 6 o'clock. Finance and Facilities will meet Monday, December 13th at 5:45. The Personnel Committee will meet Monday, December 13th at 7 o'clock. Those meetings will be in the district office. The next regular board meeting will be Monday, December 20th at 6 o'clock. Location to be determined. We'll let everybody on the board and the public know as soon as we have decided. At this point, I would like to make a request for executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 1985, 1E, F, and G for discussion of confidential legal matters related to possible district land lease and/or purchase of property, and to discuss current lease agreement and related legal matters. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Cindy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. I need a roll call vote for this. Cindy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Amy is not joining us for a closed session. I am saying yes. Todd?
yes.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Thank you. We are going to adjourn into executive session. This meeting, this portion of the meeting is over. Do we want to stay here or go?
Hi, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
Have a good time.
Thanks, Amy.
Enjoy the sunshine.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Are we?